Oliver Yossif is one of the more unique persons I have met on my journey. Going into this interview, I knew very little about Oliver, only that he had spent some time somewhere on the continent of Africa as an EMT, and that he lived on a school bus. In our conversation, we go over his history, his time in Ghana, his work in the medical field, including his work in AI and healthcare, which led to a discussion on AI and creativity, his work as a DJ, and his experience in stand-up comedy. I had a lot of fun with our meeting, and I hope you will too, as we go and meet Oliver Yossif.
Yeah, sure.
Today I'm interviewing I blinked on the name. Oliver Yossif.
Yeah, and I go by Oliver Twist on stage.
Oliver Twist.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
good book. Ever read it?
I actually have not, and I have not seen the movie either, which I'm just sorely disappointed in myself.
No, Charles Dickens' books are actually extremely entertaining.
Yeah,
completely unrealistic, but like really good character.
Yeah, for sure.
Like,
I've read A Tale of Two Cities, and I enjoyed that work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, I know he published a lot, but like of the major ones, I think that's the only one I haven't read.
Okay.
But, and I don't read that much, but
right,
I get
me
it.
neither. It's all just stuff online these days, but.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't read stuff online either.
You're not active on Reddit or anything?
No, not really. Okay. Sometimes I pop in, just see what's going on.
Yeah.
And I never post anything or...
Right, yeah. Lurking.
Best to say as invisible as possible, I feel.
That's how it goes sometimes, for sure.
But, anyway, I guess since I kind of know what you did way in the past, and I kind of know what you do now, but I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we can go from there.
Sure. So my name's Oliver. I have had a pretty diverse background. I've done all sorts of things. I've been a paramedic. I've worked in healthcare consulting. I've been a writer. I've been an editor. I have been a telemarketer. That was an accident. I didn't even mean to be a telemarketer. And someone I called like a week into the job was like, "Stop! I don't want to talk to any more telemarketers." And I was like, "Oh my God, that is what I'm doing." I've done like patient care coordination. I've interned in a psych lab. I interned in a neuroscience lab. I'm now volunteering for the Trevor Project, which is a suicide hotline for LGBTQ youth. And I'm currently also a DJ and a wedding photographer and videographer.
So
pretty diverse.
You've covered the gambit.
Yes, yeah, I would say.
Do you mind pulling the microphone just a little bit closer to you?
Does that?
No, that's way better.
Okay,
I'm just trying to not put too much gain in here.
Sure, yeah. Would you want me to move it closer?
Yeah, that's perfect right there.
Cool.
Yeah, just if you're 6 to 12 inches away from it, it picks up good.
Sure.
So, I guess we'll start with EMT, since that's the first thing you mentioned.
Sure.
Yeah, so what I saw from you was you doing EMT work in Africa. I don't know if you went right over there to...
Yeah, actually, it is the first thing. I did that 1 month after graduating from paramedic school, and it was interesting. I was on a scholarship when I was in college, and part of that scholarship included like study abroad money, travel funds, and you just didn't get it if you did not study abroad. And most everyone did one of the sort of pre-made, pre-designed, like, you go to Italy and you learn Italian for a month. Like, I don't know how much Italian you're going to pick up in 1 month. So it's sort of just a go to Italy, and you get a few $1,000s to do it. But I saw a post on Reddit from an American paramedic that went over there. And there was this like custom design. There was this guy essentially that was a paramedic, I think an American paramedic. And he was inviting people over, and he would sign your visa, essentially let you in the country, and you would work with them. And I thought that was really cool. And I was like, I could probably, get the travel funds to cover this. And so I asked about it, and it was possible. It was a real pain though, because I had to create a class for myself. And so I found a faculty advisor that was willing to work with me, And I created my own class. I wrote my own syllabus. I assigned myself reading. Whether or not I actually read the reading, I don't know. But I did, give myself all this work, and I wrote. I had to write. But I did sort of have to have a capstone, something to show for the experience. And so I wrote this like 30-page paper, I want to say, about my time there, and I also analyzed their system as well. I wrote a sort of observational report on that, and I ran a health clinic while I was there, and that's what a good chunk of the paper was about as well. But it's interesting because when I got there, right, I was on this visa to work with this specific group. The guy I was supposed to meet was in Germany doing some other stuff, and he's like, well, you can stay with my friend. And I'm not going to say his name, but Spio was a real jerk. And it took like 2 days before I was like, I cannot handle this guy anymore. And it was a lot. It was a lot of things. He was really pushy. He kept trying to get me to do specific things. He kept like insulting and putting me down. And what, sort of ended our relationship was we were driving by the headquarters for the EMS system there, because we were in the capital city. And
so this is after you're in Africa?
This was in Africa, yes. So
okay.
I was there,
Gotcha.
I sort of touched down, and as I touched down, as I get in the airport, which by the way did not have air conditioning, that's when I found out that the guy was not even in the country that I was supposed to meet. And he was like, you can be with my friend. And so a few days later, we're driving around. I forgot what exactly we were going to do. But we drove by the headquarters of the EMS system, and I was sort of just wondering aloud. I was like, well, maybe I can go in there and see what they think about working with me, or we can do something. I was just sort of just thinking out loud, and Spio was like, no, they're never going to take you. You need a letter of authorization. You need this, you need that. And I was just like, stubborn, I can be stubborn at times, and I was like, I don't know about that, we'll see, and so I go in, and I don't recall if Spio was with me or not. I think he was, actually, and I think this was right after he said that. I was like, well, let's go anyway, and we did, and they're like, yeah, we'd love to work with you, like, please, we can do all sorts of things, yada yada yada. And Spio was dismayed that I sort of won that little encounter, but then Spio also gave me a neat idea that I did run with after I broke up with him, as it were. He suggested that I run a health screening, or that sort of thing. And a few days later, I'm like, Spio, I can't deal with you anymore. I'm really sorry, but I'm just gonna do my own thing. And so I stayed in a hotel the rest of my time there. Really cheap. It's like, it's Ghana, so it was like $6 a night, and it was, or maybe 10. I don't know.
Which is, how much there probably.
I don't know. Yeah, compared to the wages were lower, very low, very low. So I did end up doing the health screening, and that was interesting. I had to, it was because it was sort of this thing that I had to design from scratch, just like the whole syllabus, the whole class. I had to go from A to Z, so I had to hire personnel to help me, take blood pressure, do this, do that. I had to hire a pharmacist, and a doctor to oversee it and provide medical authorization, because paramedics do not operate on their own. They operate essentially as the long distance hands and feet of a physician who authorizes them to do specific things. And so, like, for an ambulance system, typically there's this big fat protocol book, and it'll say, in case of this, you can do this. In case of this, you can do this. But you can't just do whatever you want like a doctor can. Like, a doctor can prescribe things off label and experiment and do all sorts of things. And as a paramedic, you can't do that. So I had to find a physician to work under. And, and then I hired some EMTs from the local EMT service, and they parked their ambulance out front to give it some sort of legitimacy. I had to find a place to do all this, it was this middle school, and then get people in the door. So I ended up going on a radio station and advertising, and, you know, talked to a few other people. And then the day of, I was not expecting this, but the TV station showed up, a national TV station, and they interviewed me. And I got to see myself later that day on national TV, which was super cool. And that little clip is still on my Tinder. I should probably take it off because it's been a few years now. But that is, you know, I think I peaked there, and it's all been downhill.
Yeah.
It's all been downhill.
So I kind of hate to, you know, stop your rolling here.
Yeah,
but,
no, for sure.
So,
I can, get carried away.
So I'm trying to figure out, because I know you were saying with, like, you know, the other study abroad things you're looking at, that was like a month or something like that.
Yeah.
So how much time do you have over there?
About a month and a half.
A month and a half?
That, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, setting this up here sounds like it'd be complicated.
Yes.
So is there a language barrier in Ghana, or is it most people kind of know English?
Yeah. But, well,
so was it an English colony then, or?
I think so. Yeah, there was part of like the gold. There was a lot of gold that was extracted from this country as part of colonialism, I suppose, of some flavor. But yeah, they speak English. There's some nearby neighboring countries that speak French. But there was a language barrier the day of the health screening, which it was a 2-day health screening, and I wasn't expecting there to be a language barrier because English is the official language of the country, but we were doing it in a poor neighborhood, and they spoke some dialect that I'd never heard of, and I managed to, like, last minute get some translators in to help out. Yeah.
So from the time you arrived there to when you set up this health screening and everything, sort of how much time do you have between?
It was a few weeks. I want to say like 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay.
I was very active every day. I was getting out, you know, finding people to talk to, you know, getting shit done, right, essentially.
So, you know, you said you had to get, like, doctors and stuff like that. Did you kind of make those connections before you ended up in the country, or?
No, because I didn't know the right people to talk to. I didn't know where to go. I mean, I could Google things, right? But you only get so far calling a phone number and being like, hi, can I talk to who's in charge? Like that.
Yeah.
Works sometimes, but it also doesn't work sometimes. And showing up in person with my uniform on, and I hate to say it, but as a white person, that definitely gave me some more legitimacy as well. And that I made connections like that, really just showing up, talking to people. And that's how I met those people. That's how I was able to get, the staff in the door, you know, and I paid them, of course. There was a complication. I think day 2 of the screening, one of the people that was a higher up, like a medical director in the, ambulance service, the National Ambulance Service, he found out that this health screening was happening with his EMTs, and he called me out to go see him. And I was like, I'm in the middle of this screening, like I'm seeing patients, I can't just leave. This was being relayed to me by his people, and they're like, no, you have to go or he's gonna, like, shut this down. And I'm like, okay, I don't know that he even can do that, but this is a foreign country. I don't know, you know, how it works around here, so sure. You know, and so they took me in the ambulance, and sort of chewed me out for 20 minutes. Not 20 minutes. It was like 5 minutes. It felt like 20 minutes.
It felt
right,
like,
yeah. And I, you know, sort of responded with like, hey, I'm doing a good thing. You know, like I am doing a good thing. I have the appropriate staff on board. We've got medical direction. That's the physician that I was talking about. That's who you need to, right, authorize things. And I was like, hey, I'm trying to do a good thing. We're seeing patients. We're treating them. We've got a pharmacist there. We've got, you know, all this staff. We're seeing them for free. Like, we're helping the community. And he sort of begrudgingly was like, okay, fine. And he let me go back. So
yeah. So what was his concern on it?
I think that I didn't ask for permission. But I didn't know who to ask for permission, again, because I didn't know sort of, and I knew that I needed a medical director of some sort, because they use the same system that we do here. In fact, they use the same registry for EMTs and paramedics. They have a person from, I want to say Minnesota or Michigan, go out there and do the testing. because it's the same EMT basic is the lowest level, then an EMT intermediate, which is not a popular title or training program in the States, but that's their highest there. They don't have any paramedics there. So
Okay.
that also helped me gain legitimacy because I was like the only paramedic in the country pretty much.
Yeah.
So I think that I didn't follow his framework that he expected, but again, I didn't really quite know
Yeah.
who to talk. I didn't know that
where to go.
I didn't know about this guy before.
I mean, you've got like a month and a half, you said. To,
right.
like,
So it was sort of all
figure out the whole system. So, I know you said that, you know, a lot of it is based or almost identical to how we run EMT, paramedic kind of stuff here.
Sure.
So, what were the differences that you saw? Because I know you said you had to write a paper on it.
Sure. Yeah. I wish I'd have prepared and pulled that up, but I did not. So one of the biggest differences was lack of resources. So big difference in infrastructure availability and in physical resources. So, for example, there were almost no meds on the ambulances. Because I also did some ride-outs with them. So no meds on the ambulances, or hardly any. The oxygen tanks were half the time empty. And there was no one really knew how to... Like, sometimes we'd go on a call and they'd give us their oxygen tank, but we had to fight them over it. Like, they're like, no, we don't want to give it to you. And we're like, we need it. You know, people will die. And so that was a challenge. A bunch of the ambulances were out of service because of physical repairs, like engine issues, you know, think like car troubles. In fact, before I even started talking to the National Ambulance Service, I was walking around downtown and I randomly saw like this ambulance graveyard. I was like, that's interesting. Let me take some pictures of it. And the guy that was working on them sort of chased me out of there. He's like, get out, no pictures, you know? And I was like, okay. I don't think I've ever published that picture, but I probably should have. That was a very interesting sight, just to see like 30 broken down ambulances, you know? So when I went
was it, they were kind of, was it like that was like the donor ambulances?
Exactly.
Or,
yeah, so they take out of commission ambulances from like European countries and other places that are willing to sell them for really cheap.
Okay.
But they're end of life,
Yeah.
you know? So, yeah. You can only get so far with those.
Yeah. So, I guess the next question is kind of what was your expectation versus reality going over there? Because I know just human nature, you know, and like our pop culture and stuff, we assume stuff about going to, you know, XYZ place.
Yeah, I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, I've traveled a good bit. I've been to like, you know, over a dozen, I think over 15 countries. But this was my first, you know, sort of developing country that, you know, faced as much challenges and as much poverty. So I didn't really know what to expect. I sort of had a vague idea from media and Instagram, that sort of thing. But I didn't quite really know. Sorry, let me put this on Do Not Disturb here. Yeah, so I didn't really know. You know, what ended up happening was different. And I think the biggest differences were what I saw in the EMS infrastructure. Also, it was a shock to get to the airport and not have AC. Nowhere had AC. That was a shock for sure. I have a story to illustrate how different the EMS service was there. So my very first call that I did a ride out for was a call for a dying baby. That's all we knew. That, you know, we didn't have further information than that. It was a hospital like 30 minutes out, which you're not supposed to be. We weren't supposed to be the closest ambulance, but we had like 40 ambulances in the system and like 34 of them were down in repairs. So we had 6 ambulances. We were the closest ambulance. So it was me and 2 EMTs, and one of them was just not there when the call dropped. Like, I don't know where he went, but he wasn't there, and the other guy was like waiting for him. We waited like 10 minutes, and then I was like, hey man, we should probably get going. Like, you don't wait 10 minutes to go to a call, especially for a dying baby, right? And so eventually he's like, okay, fine. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I'm not supposed to be in charge here, you know? Like, I'm here to watch, essentially. Like, but what would he do? You can't just go to a call by yourself, right? And because someone's got to drive, someone's got to be in the back doing stuff. So we get there. and pull up, and we get to the room with the dying baby, and it was apparently a set of newborns. They were like 5-6 hours old. One of them was fine, and one of them was actively like declining really bad. Respirations were severely down, the heart rate was tanking, a few other things. Baby looked kind of blue, was not great. And apparently this baby also coded as soon as they were born, so they had to perform CPR and revive the kid, and the kid made it for a few hours, and then that's when they called us. But there was a gynecologist, or not a gynecologist, an obstetrician in the room, so trained physician, and she knew what she was doing. And the OB nurses were a mixed bag. And I don't say that to talk down to them, but I mean, you'll see in a moment here. So I'm like, let's take the kid that's okay down to the ambulance, and like I can stay with him, or you can stay with him while we get the next one down, because they were actively still working on the baby. So I'm like, this is not the greatest time to pull, a kid that's being worked on from the hands of a trained physician, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe we can stabilize them for a few more minutes, and then, so we did that, and I'm down there with the kid that's fine. But coming out at the same time as a kid that coded probably is not a good sign, right? So I was still kind of panicking. I was like, go get the other kid. And I grabbed some random nursing student. I was like, hey, come here, like sit with me. And so we do that. And then they bring the other kid down, and the kid is blue, like not like he was a second ago, but blue. And I'm like, they weren't doing CPR. It was my partner and this random nurse. And I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, load him up. I'm like, no, he's dead. What? Like, this is crazy. And I was like, we need to start CPR. I'm like, we're starting CPR right now.
Yeah.
And I'm doing it with this nurse. My partner runs off to get like an oxygen tank or something. I don't know. And at this point, I'm like not even asking questions. And the nurse kept stopping ventilations to cover the baby up. And the first time it happened, I was like, please continue ventilations. And then it happened again and happened again. I was like, what are you doing? Like, you cannot be stopping ventilations. Like, that's the most important thing that you need to be doing, is putting air in this kid. And she's like, the baby's cold. Oh, man.
So was it because the child was blue? She figured it was cold?
I don't know what her understanding of the situation was and what in her head she was doing. I mean, you do want to provide warmth to a newborn, especially when they're collapsing like that. But airway, airway and breathing is far more important, and oxygenation is especially important in infants, right? So, so that was concerning, and I sort of, I don't know if I snapped at her or what, but I was like, please get the doctor, because I saw that she knew what she was doing. So the doctor came down, and the doctor and I performed CPR for 5 minutes or so. She knew what she was doing. She was, we were doing it in tandem, like, a well-oiled machine. I'm like, can we get some epinephrine? She's like, okay, let's get it. And so we have to call for it, because of course we don't have it on it's adrenaline. You're supposed to have that on every ambulance. That's like one of the most basic things you need on an ambulance for CPR and stuff. Although there's research showing it doesn't really do all that much, but but it's very standard, right?
If you look at section B of the medical report.
Right. Well, I'm just saying the research on it is not great, but it is very standard. And so the fact that we didn't have it is kind of crazy. And so, we push epi, we're doing CPR, and it's not doing anything. This kid is not breathing on its own. I genuinely think that them walking the kid down without, like, missing 2 minutes of air, because they took like the stairs and all that probably, I don't know if that killed the kid. He was already, at death's door. So, but that did not help. And so I'm like, hey, we should call it. Like, this other kid's in the back too, and who knows how stable he is. Like, I want to get him to the next hospital so we can, have him in the hands of someone that has access to equipment and drugs and doctors. Like, I'm just some American that's here, like, I don't know what I'm doing, And she's like, okay, so we called the death, and Dad is around the corner watching this whole spectacle, and he hops on the ambulance. The nurse that had no idea what she was doing hops on the ambulance, and I'm like, I turn to the dad and I'm like, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but your child passed away just now. We were not able to resuscitate him. he looks at me in the face and he laughs and he goes, "We'll have another." I'm just like, what the hell have I stepped into, you know? And I sort of had this look on my face that was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And one of them, either the nurse or him, goes, "Welcome to Ghana." I'm like, wow. So yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. That was my first call.
That's
on the
pretty
ambulance
heavy.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what overall was your takeaway from the experiences you had there?
So infrastructure is important. I know I've read some of the research that other people did there, and the response times, as I saw, and from that story, you can see the response times weren't great. The ambulance can't even do much for you. Man, and I know someone there is gonna listen to this and they're gonna be like, "Oh, he's a jerk. He came over here and now he's talking trash." But really, I mean, I would rather take a taxi.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking that, and because the taxis are everywhere, you know, you can get one easily. You can get to a hospital. In fact, at the health screening we had an ambulance on site, and there was a guy who came in with a astronomical blood pressure. And normally the thinking now is you don't really treat asymptomatic hypertension unless it's crazy. This was crazy. This was the highest blood pressure I've ever seen. It was over 300 systolic, which is insane. We retook it a few times just because we were all like, there must be a mistake. And so I went with him. You know, we started an IV, gave him some fluids, which is not great because that's pushing the blood pressure up. There just wasn't anything else we could do. And we're like, let's at least start an IV.
Yeah.
And we took a taxi to an ER. Dropped him off. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, which, you know, you've only got a month and a half. What was it? Political? Was it just?
In what way?
I guess most of what you're saying is the infrastructure and stuff. Is it the centralized sort of who controls the medicine, who controls what goes to where, or is it? I guess it's probably just problems
I don't
going.
know.
Probably, you know, problems going back to whenever. You know?
Yeah, no, I mean, this is probably in no small part the fault of the British at some level, right? If it's an English colony at some point, like extracting all these resources and whatnot. I don't know the answer to that question, really. I don't. I just know what I saw.
Yeah. So, after, you know, you go there and run this clinic and everything, what's it like coming back, I guess?
I felt thankful for the infrastructure that we have here, you know, that it really made me appreciate all the logistics that go into just a single 911 call, you know, and all of that, and how the calls happen, how dispatch happened, because I also got to sit with dispatch for a bit and see that, and and sort of just appreciation. And I wanted to start a nonprofit. Yeah, I made the website and everything and had the Facebook page. It was called Emergent Ghana, and I wanted to go back and do more work there, and that just never panned out. And I regret that. Maybe one day I would like to, you know, go back.
Yeah. So from there, what do you go on to do?
So I graduated with my bachelor's in neuroscience and in psychology, and then I finished my associate's in EMS, and I worked in EMS. I worked as a paramedic for a year around here in a rural system in East Texas, and that was neat because in a rural system you can do a lot more than you can in a city, right? If you're in a city, you've got 5 to 10 minute transport time, or maybe longer if you're going like downtown or something, but usually it doesn't take you long to get to the hospital. And so for that reason, they're not going to let you do anything crazy because it can wait a few minutes most of the time. You can always call medical direction. And like I said, you're the hands and the feet of the providers, so they can technically tell you to do brain surgery in certain jurisdictions, and I think Texas is one of them. So they can let you do whatever.
So how many brain surgeries have you
I
done?
have done 0 brain surgeries. Never got to do anything that cool. But that would have been neat. Yeah.
So I guess can you give an example of like what working rural EMS versus that like
Yeah. So intubation is probably like RSI is probably the most common example. Rapid sequence intubation. So if you see someone that is actively losing their airway and you know that they're going to lose their airway, you can purposefully paralyze them, sedate them, and grab that airway with a tube down their throat before it happens itself. And that's a dangerous procedure, right? Because if you screw up and you miss the tube, well, congrats. You paralyzed them. This is your fault. Maybe you were wrong and they weren't going to collapse, right? So you can kind of kill someone doing that. But that is something that they will let you do out here because sometimes you need to grab that airway before, let's say, severe anaphylaxis, someone gets stung by a bee and their throat is swelling up. You may not be able to push that tube in if you wait, because of the swelling. So things like that. I got to call a bunch of helicopters. That was kind of cool, felt important. I was like, you're stuck with the $40,000 bill. That was terrible. Like I felt really bad every time I called a helicopter.
You're sure the general, I don't have to deal with the consequences.
Yeah, which sucks. I mean, healthcare in this country is all sorts of messed up, and I've got all sorts of opinions about that. But calling a helicopter was a common thing. RSI, I never got to do an RSI, but intubation, that sort of thing.
So I guess like who governs or like what a EMT can do and can't? What's the difference between rural and city?
So in all these systems, I think in every state, I want to say there is someone in charge of whatever EMT or paramedic you have in question, usually like a system, that is the physician in charge, the medical director. So when I was saying medical direction earlier, that's what I was referring to. That's who writes that big protocol book. That's who says you're allowed to do X, Y, and Z. And then, so that's what is called offline medical direction, in that you can do that without consulting with the provider every single time. You're just allowed to do, you have standing orders that you're allowed to do those things. But there's also online medical direction. So if you have a situation that doesn't fit in that protocol book, or if you just need help, you can call the doctor, and that's when they're like, okay, you can do this that's not in the protocol book. I authorize it. Those calls are on a recorded line, whatever. And so if there is like litigation down the line, you can turn to that. Yes. And that is, it's actually, it's very, the liability is very much on the physician, not the paramedics, in a lot of cases. So you don't have to worry about that very much. Like one time I had a 27-year-old, something like that, who, had all of the heart attack symptoms, had the classic tombstones on his EKG, and if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, right?
Yeah.
But it's still like 27-year-olds don't have heart attacks, right? So I called online medical direction. I'm like, here's what's happening, A, B, C, and D. And he's like, yeah, that sounds like a heart attack. Treat it like one, So I'm like, okay. So, we go lights and sirens, and, I call the cath lab because I'm like, hey, we're about to have a heart attack come in, like, get ready. Right? Yeah. So they can get everyone together and prepare because it takes a few minutes. And so we get in, I drop the patient off, and the ER doctor's like, good catch. So I was like, yeah, nice. Yeah.
So are you still doing EMT work?
No,
or
I only did that for a year, and I let my license expire, unfortunately, because of depression during the pandemic, and I just sort of didn't renew it, and I never renewed it, so I just never.
Yeah.
But it's fine. I got it out of my system, I guess,
Yeah.
It was
so
cool.
so it's
fun.
not something you would ever think about going back to do?
I mean, I would if I didn't have to redo the whole training program at this point.
Yeah.
Because it's like fully expired. I had a year where I could do like a diet program and be able to get my full license back just by doing that. But
now you would have to.
I'd have to do the whole thing. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so I know now you said you do comedy, DJing, and streaming, right?
Streaming is something that I did for a period
For
of
a
time.
period of time.
I stopped because it was too much work. So I used to, when I was in college, I was president of the philosophy club. And when I graduated, I really missed that. I missed, having these sort of high level, interesting conversations that make you think. And so I was like, let me do that on Twitch, because there's no one that was doing that at the time. I don't know if there is now, but there was no one doing that at the time. And so I would prepare a topic, and I would play Fortnite while I was talking about whatever. So it was Fortnite Philosophy Fridays for the alliteration. Is that a sound that we need to...
No, it's just this camera's only got so much battery.
Oh, do you need to replace the battery or something?
I don't. Usually I just record for like 45 minutes.
Oh, have we hit the time?
No, I don't cut it off after 45 minutes.
Okay.
I continue with the audio. I just do the video as long as I can. And then,
okay, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
this is unlimited time.
Okay, I'm a wordy person, so if you need to shut me up at any point,
no,
feel
it's
free to
great
shut me up.
because it's way better than having somebody that like I go, so
Right, one
this
word.
thing happened in your life. How was that? Pretty sad.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah, you're welcome to cut whatever you need to cut.
No, you're fine.
But so I enjoyed that, and I would do these Fortnite Philosophy Friday things and talk about whatever philosophy topic, and I'd prepare this whole multiple page outline. But that was a lot of work. It took hours. Preparing for an hour long stream or an hour and a half long stream, it took me like 4-5 hours to get to truly understand the topic to a level enough where I could interact with viewers about it. Where if someone asked me a question while I am trying to like box up and do edits, in Fortnite, that was the hardest part. Every time I got into a fight, I would like stop talking because it was just so hard to do both at the same time. And it just never took off. I mean, I was fairly consistent, and then I just stopped because it was too much work. But I will say, recently, so I'm super big on AI, and I used ChatGPT to write a outline, and it did all of that 5 hours of work in 10 seconds. So I've been thinking about possibly restarting, because of that. But to AI, I worked. My next move after EMS was working at a medtech startup, an AI startup.
Okay, so what was that looking at? Were y'all specializing in something? Or?
Yeah, radiology. So we were building a machine learning model, a type of machine learning called deep learning, and a type of deep learning called federated learning, to diagnose certain things that you can diagnose off of imaging. So we were collecting a bunch of radiological images and feeding them into this model and trying to say like, hey, this says that you have 85% chance that this is pneumonia or something to that effect. And so we had a MVP, minimum viable product, and we were talking to venture capital firms, and that was sort of what I did. I was doing business development primarily, and we had a radiologist that was like on the team, but he never showed up to the meeting. So I was really kind of our only medical person.
Yeah.
And so I was reaching out to venture capital firms, and I was on a few of these pitches. And I got to say, they were terrifying. Talking to someone that has the ability to make or break your company, and just has way more money than you, and you're like, please give me a crumb. Please give me $100,000, and we never got a solid yes. We got 2 yes if, yes if you get a primary funder. Yes if, you get more money from this group. So we had like a few $100,000 in yes ifs, but that was not ultimately enough to keep the company
But that's
going.
not $100,000.
Yeah, it was well, yeah, that was not, it wasn't any money really. So
So I'm just trying to understand how it works. So is it y'all collected so much imaging, would put that into the system, then like using your thing of pneumonia, give that a percentage point of like how likely it is the person had pneumonia,
Sure.
And then it gathers all those, and then based on a new image somebody would put in or something, new imaging.
Yeah, in theory, yeah, you can use a new imaging and you can tag the data. So it's sort of similar at a very basic level to how these LLMs like ChatGPT and Gemini and all Bard, whatever, how they work. You just ingest a ton of data, and the model is able to look at patterns in the data to make conclusions, especially when you're able to tag the data, which is a big part of the job of people involved in this process. When they're data collecting, you have to appropriately annotate and label that data. And that's a very hard part of the process. So in our case, you would need confirmed images. Like you would need pictures of pneumonia that multiple radiologists have looked at and would be able to say, this is pneumonia, you know? Or you would get it confirmed some other way, and then you would have that data labeled. Problem is, it's hard for a random group of people to get 1 million pictures of pneumonia. We just didn't have access to that. There were some free data sets, but they were only tens of thousands strong, you know? And
so how much data would you need?
I mean, to get to get better than a radiologist, and I say that very hesitantly, but you would need a lot more than we had. I don't have an exact number, but I know that so radiologists have on average about like a 3 to 5% error rate across the board. For certain complex diagnoses, that can jump up as high as 20%, even more in certain rare cases. So as long as you're able to beat that number consistently, I think you've got a product. We were not able to get close to that because we just didn't have the data. And so no one would partner with us.
Do you know what percentage you had towards the end?
Something like the 70s for, I want to say pneumonia specifically.
So that was 70% accuracy?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. But I don't know that. We're not even recording, but yeah, no, I don't know, something like that. But they are doing this now. So this was in 2020. They're doing this now. This is a thing that has been, I
mean, the growth of it in the last
crazy.
3 years.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm a very big AI proponent. I think it's absolutely the future. I think we're getting close to the point where we're going to reach artificial general intelligence like very soon. Arguably, we maybe kind of already have. And like, it's just ChatGPT. Like, you don't even need anything more complicated or crazy than that. It's smarter than a lot of people I know. It's a better writer than a lot of people I know. It's a better thinker than a lot of people I know. And it's easy to say like, no, it's not, because it's not doing any thinking. It's just a stochastic parrot. It's just statistics and randomness and whatnot. But I don't know that we're any different than that. What makes us not stochastic parrots? Like, we pick up information from our environment, we ingest a ton of data, we analyze the patterns in it, and then we're able to spout things off that make sense to other human beings.
Yeah.
That's the same way that it works, right? Or these language models or visual models work as well.
See, I don't know if I agree with that with specifically the music and the artwork, but I don't have a good enough argument at the time for it.
Sure.
But
what are your thoughts?
I believe that in art specifically, depending on how you believe it, I've got certain beliefs in it, but I believe that is the closest we can get to expressing something of transcendence beyond that. Some would call it the muse or ideas like that.
Right.
And
higher level.
Yeah, and it's like people are like, oh, there's, they put it out in AI whoever song, right? And it's just as good. And I listen to it and I'm like, but there's not this inspiration there. It's you said put this in, but it's not something. I don't know how to explain it well.
I think I understand the gist of it. Is that it's fundamentally, these models are fundamentally incapable of higher level thinking, right? Like they can't be inspired. They can't, they can't come up with novel content. And that's kind of true. Like they can only do as much as the data you feed them. But keep feeding them more data, run them on more powerful computers. We have not reached the peak. This is
I don't know.
I guess
let's take an example in music.
Sure.
Late 80s, music on the whole is in a pretty terrible state. Okay, you have some alt bands, REM,
sure,
those guys who are writing good stuff. At that time, what is in is Guns N' Roses, hair metal, that sort of thing. If you have a data set from that era, right? You're feeding a computer that. You are not going to get Nirvana, Alice in Chains, and Pearl Jam out of that. You're not going to get something that completely changes music. You're going to get more of the same. There's sort of that inspiration that I feel.
So, I understand why you would say that.
Which I guess there is the argument that, let's say, you take Nirvana. They've got inspiration from the Pixies, from REM, from those other bands.
Right.
But I also think there is something unique about Kurt Cobain, and then he completely changed music from that point on to an extent.
I think the models are just not powerful enough yet. I think in the exact same way that this novel music is created, the AI will soon be able to do that, where you're taking previous content, just like we do, and you're drawing parallels that you have not made before. You're extrapolating from what you've seen, and you're making new connections, but those new connections are not entirely novel. You're still basing, the novelty of that music on what you've seen before. You're just combining it in ways that you haven't done yet, or that haven't been done yet.
I guess there's also... How would you incorporate, because my brother's a guitar player, and we've talked about this, modern guitar playing on the whole. I'm not going to say all of them because they're still great bands. Sure. I don't want to be,
sure.
the old man. Nothing new is good.
Sure.
There are, but you look at who was considered sort of the rock guitar gods of yesteryear and such, compared to now, what's in is extremely technical. It's like taking math rock to a new extreme on the playing end, but it's not tasteful, if that makes sense. I don't know how you program tastefulness into your data entry, but there's a certain thing about holding back, about limiting things, that it doesn't seem like, you can watch, TikToks full of it, whatever, where people pick up a guitar and they do something extremely technical and stuff.
Sure.
At the end of the day, it's not going to sound like a Jimi Hendrix solo, or it's not going to be as good as one.
Sure.
And the reason is because there's a certain tastefulness that I think is missing. I think when you go into we just input more data, we input more influence or whatever, I think there's a sort of human element that I'm not sure how we're going to get for tastefulness in these performances.
And I hear that, and you're certainly not alone in thinking that. In fact, I recently spoke with a family friend who is a mathematician, like a professional mathematician, PhD in math. She works with AI at a level far more advanced than I ever did, and has a much better understanding of the whole thing. And she completely agrees with you. And I was disagreeing with her. And I think, what it comes down to is a difference in philosophy. It's a difference in vibes. It's not a difference in anything evidence-based. She had no evidence to support her position, and I have no evidence to support my position. I'm sort of just saying that I think at a physical level, the difference between us and the bots is just silicon versus carbon, right? And eventually, when you have more data, stronger processors running this inference and creating these models in the first place, I think we're going to see, as an emergent property, we're going to see true creativity. We're going to see true novelty. We're going to see true growth and change that we just haven't seen yet, because we've only been using a small amount of our total compute.
Yeah. I guess there's also the question of value in that, and what value I'm going to put in things. If, for instance, you could put in, something into ChatGPT, right?
Mm.
And it may be a perfectly valid novel, let's say.
Yeah.
But I feel like at the end of the day, there's still something about us that's going to want something that is genuine instead of... Because I guess unless we do reach true general intelligence, I don't know if that we're going to feel that genuineness there. I don't know if that makes sense.
I've seen outputs from ChatGPT because, like I said, I use it very extensively. I'm actually looking at my recent conversation logs, and I've got 50-ish in the past 30 days, different conversations, independent conversations, where I ask it for advice and I ask it to talk to me. I've done therapy with it. My therapist was very impressed, by the way, when I read the responses from ChatGPT and whatnot. I ask it for all sorts of things, and I've definitely seen it produce things that are indistinguishable from what a human being would respond with, and you can't tell sometimes, know. And again, this is as bad as it's going to be. It's only going to get better.
Yeah, I guess my idea is like there's the whole art sort of thing, is I think at the end of the day, I don't know, like I can go out and I'm going to use this because I'm simple and I like knife making. I like pointy, sharp bars of iron.
Sure. Yeah.
So I can go out and probably spend $50 on a knife.
Mm-hmm.
It'll do everything I want it to do and stuff. But I would still value more going to get a handmade knife from somebody else, from somebody who still made that. And so I think there's sort of this argument that like, oh, well, we're just going to have, input all these artists and we're going to have all the songs we want. We're going to have all the art we want.
Yeah.
And I think... maybe, it's sort of a naive idea, but I think people will still want that handmade, human-made.
I don't think that's naive at all. I think you're right, but I think they will only want that where they can even tell. I think where there are differences that matter to people. For example, I said therapy as an example of something that ChatGPT is great at, but I don't think in-person therapy is going away anytime soon, because people will want to, until we have physical robotics that are indistinguishable from people, which is, I think, pretty far away. But when you're doing therapy over the phone, like the voice stuff is really close, and the content that it produces is really close. But things like that, customer support, conversations, even video generation. I don't know if you've seen the Sora model that just dropped 2 days ago, but it's crazy. You type in a text prompt and it produces photorealistic. I mean, there are some issues still with certain things. Like you can watch some of those videos and if you look really closely, some people in the background are like walking kind of funny, they're kind of like floating or whatever, but it's just damn close. It's scary. It's scary, and I think at some point it will be indistinguishable, and that's when it's really scary.
Yeah. I guess too, there is part of it where it's sort of the like Jurassic Park, can you, but why? Where it's like, why do we want to replace the things that give us meaning? Like I can understand healthcare being one, you want to, save as many people as possible, give people the best care that they can and stuff.
Sure.
When it's, like somebody said this, like in the Jetsons, you know, it was all about, you know, we have time to do all the things we love.
Sure, and that's my answer. Really.
And the robots clean up the trash and all that stuff. Instead, we're training the robots now to like, oh, come on. No, we were talking about, you know,
meaning and purpose in the content of AI produced stuff, and you were saying that like, why are we doing away with the things that give us purpose and meaning?
Yeah,
which is a great question. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know.
You know, it's you know, I'll go back to the beginning because now I remember. You know, the idea was like, you know, the Jetsons, this kind of 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s idea. Although I think 70s, everybody just got depressed and said, forget about it.
Sure.
of like, in the future, we're going to have artificial intelligence. It's going to do all the things we don't want to do so we can create art, you know?
Yeah.
And now we're like, well, we're going to have everything write for us, create images for us, create video for us, create paintings for us, all you know, music. And we can work for Amazon.
Which is very dystopian and terrible. I agree with that. But I don't think that this image and video generation is entirely like... I don't think... Like, you can still create art, and that still provides meaning. But also, it can take away the tediousness of, for example, producing stock images or stock video. So that's an industry that's probably going away.
The thing is, though, like... That's not what we're seeing going away. We're seeing graphic artists, writers,
right?
You know, stuff like that.
And I think the reason is just sort of capitalistic in nature. It's like it's cheaper, and that's it. That's the whole reason. It's cheaper.
Yeah, of course. I don't know. I mean, Soviet Russia. If they could have had a cheaper way,
no,
you know?
For sure. Yeah.
I don't know if it slowly funds.
No, I'm not saying that it's necessarily capitalism at its core that's causing that, but I think it's money.
I think it's human nature.
That as,
maybe it's just human nature, or
right. It's easier. It's cheaper. I mean, at some level, why wouldn't you? But if it's, you know, you want something creative, and again, I think that this stuff is creative. I don't think it's non-creative. I think the process isn't. And I think that's the same reason that you would pay much more for a knife that you know has a story. It's the story that you're buying. It's the history. It's the tale.
Maybe that's why I do this.
Maybe, you know, and it's a lot of the same stuff. It's, you know, it's the story that makes it what it is. That's what you're into. And that's, again, I don't think that's going away. People will still want that. Yeah. But when it's like making a picture of a guy shaking someone else's hand, but he has like the company product in the hand, you can just get AI to do that now, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. It's an interesting thing. And, you know, it's kind of this idea of like, you know, thinking about the printing press, how much that disrupted how the world worked. Yeah. And you know, we had... Trying to think, that was that 1600s,
something like that.
Yeah. So we had from then.
Let me ask ChatGPT. 15th century, around 1440, by Johannes Gutenberg.
Okay, so a little bit older than I was saying, but we had, you know, what is that to, you know, 600 years maybe before, you know, the iPhone came out. Mm-hmm. And then from there, the amount of time, stuff that's passed, and you know, who's to say how well we adapted to widespread spread of knowledge before that, compared to now we have instant knowledge gratification, whatever you want.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it's just now kind of caught up to us what's happened, how fast things actually are moving.
Yeah.
And how do we handle what changes from there?
I know that's a great question. I don't think there is an answer to that question really, and I think it's scary. And I think this is a question that a lot of people need to be thinking about more. I think AI is currently at a level where it is as impactful as something like the printing press or the Industrial Revolution, and we just haven't had enough time to play with it yet to see all these solutions in action. But, you know, and it's growing. It's getting so much better, so fast, crazy fast, you know? A year ago, I don't know if you've seen that video of Will Smith eating pasta done by AI.
Yeah.
Like, that sucked. That was not convincing. But now you see this Sora product that's made by the same people that make ChatGPT by OpenAI, and you can't tell. Like, at a first glance, it looks real, you know, and I don't know how we're going to deal with that. I don't know how we're going to deal with not a million, all of the jobs, almost all of the jobs going away, because it's going to be cheaper to automate them, especially as these language models get better and better and better. At some point, you know, and I've already seen posts on Reddit. I follow like graphic design subs and editing subreddits and stuff like that. And I've seen many posts from people saying, yeah, I was fired, I was laid off, and so was my whole team, because they're going to get AI to do it. And there's a mix of responses like, oh, they're going to go bankrupt doing that. But I don't know. Again, it's only going to get better from here. So
yeah, I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
We probably recorded more about AI than we did about your actual
No, I mean, it's
career.
something I'm really into, you know.
Yeah,
and
it's fascinating.
So I actually, it is something that I want to do, because I know a lot more about AI than a lot of people. And I have automated a lot of my personal work at various roles I've had before. Like, I used to work with patients on the phone, Medicare patients, and I would help them come up with like care goals and care plans. And I spent a few days creating this prompt where essentially all I had to do was type in like HTN, T2DM, and it would spit back a personalized script that I could read from that would suggest care plan ideas for hypertension and type 2 diabetes. So there definitely are a lot of applications where you can automate a lot of work with AI as it currently is. And so I kind of want to do that as a consultant and help companies like maybe small to medium-sized firms, like legal firms or other consulting firms, you know, people that have money, and people that are willing to automate part of their work. Like lawyers do a lot of reading. They do a lot of the same writing over and over again. I bet a lot of that is automatable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was thinking of starting a consulting firm doing AI consulting. And if I did, I would call it Sky Consulting, because Sky, SKAI, because Sky, you know, implies growth, implies upwards motion. It's got AI in the name. It matches an existing word, so people can pronounce it already. And SK is the first two letters in schoolie as well, which is what people call these school bus homes. I don't think I even talked about the bus.
No, I was gonna here. So you talked about a possible career path forward.
Sure. Yeah.
So let's talk about DJing and comedy. How did you get into those?
Sure. DJing was sort of an accident. I was applying for work, and only remote work. It's like exclusively remote work. And I randomly decided to check what was in Tyler, and I saw DJing. I was like, okay, cool. You know, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
And I applied and I called in, and she liked the fact that I called in and I wanted to meet in person. She was like, yeah, no one else did that. So, and I was thinking like, oh man, they probably want someone with experience, you know? And my ex at the time was like, no, you're exactly what they're looking for. And I'm like, no, I don't think I am. Even though the job ad said no experience necessary. And I get in, I have my interview, and she's like, word for word, she's like, you're exactly what we're looking for. I was like, okay.
So
Cool.
I'm guessing this is like event DJing.
Yeah,
so,
like weddings and stuff like that.
So is it like you're letting the venue give you what kind of music you play?
It's all up to them, you know. So I will call them so a week or two before the performance, you know, and ideally before that, and ask them like, hey, what do you want? How do you want me to act? How much do you want me to talk on the microphone? Do we have a schedule? What kind of music do you want me to play? What kind of music do you not want me to play? What kind of people are going to show up? Like what demographics, what ages, what, you know, are there going to be kids? All sorts of things. So kind of get the vibe, like let them sort of talk and handle that conversation. And I'm sort of just listening and, you know, vibe checking them. And so that determines how I react and how I show up and how I behave that day. Yeah. Which is fun. It's fun seeing the dynamicity and the difference between, you know, like I've done a 50th high school reunion, you know, and that was very different than like a young couple's wedding. Yeah. Right. And different from a holiday party. Right. So, yeah. Comedy is a bit different. My foray into comedy was So I mentioned I was super depressed a little while ago, a few years back, and I, let my EMS license expire. And I was just in this really deep depression. It was like after a breakup, after a job change that was not good. That's when the telemarketing happened. And and so I was like, I need to get out of the house. I need to like go. I didn't have a working car, and I was living in Winona, which there's nothing in Winona. But like 5 liquor stores. So it wasn't great. It wasn't great. And so I went on a random trip to New York City, that my friend invited me to, and he ended up not even going. So I just went to New York City by myself, but that's like what I needed. I was like, oh my God, I need to get out of the house. I need to go do things. I saw a comedy show while I was there, like my second ever comedy show. And I saw that there was a comedy club in town. I was like, I'm going to go do that. It'll give me something to do. And I wanted to go play Yu-Gi-Oh as well, which is what this giant poster is behind me. So I did. I went to do both of those things. And
I didn't know that they had a Yu-Gi-Oh comedy combo.
No, there isn't. But whenever I say the word Yu-Gi-Oh on stage, everyone immediately groans or claps or something because I've done so many Yu-Gi-Oh jokes. Girls are so weird in bed. They say that they want to watch you play with yourself, but apparently it doesn't count when you combo off into Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. Like, come on, you didn't say no fusion monsters. I would have brought my Exodia deck. That's stupid. So stupid.
You're so terminally online, man.
I was terminally online. But I got a great laugh when the actual Yu-Gi-Oh player showed up, like an Austin comedian or something.
Yeah.
And he shows up and, he briefly, just in passing as he's doing his set, mentions that he plays Yu-Gi-Oh, and the crowd erupted because they all knew me, and I was just like, oh my God. I was like, I have to go do something when I get on stage, and I did, and I made a reference to like meta, like the current meta, like what people are playing. It's Tearlaments. I mentioned Tearlaments, and he is cracking up in the back, and I'm like, this is why I do comedy. It was a very good feeling. But yeah, no, I just randomly went to go to the comedy club and to go start playing Yu-Gi-Oh, and I've been doing that since, like on a weekly basis, pretty much. I've been doing open mics every Monday at Rose City, and I play Yu-Gi-Oh almost every Sunday and every Tuesday evening. And I usually lose because the people there are very good at Yu-Gi-Oh, and I'm just good at Yu-Gi-Oh.
Where do you play it?
Game Crave Tournament Store. It's in Southeast Tyler, just off the Loop.
Okay, I was just wondering. I've got a friend who's into all that.
It's a very cool. I don't know. I haven't been to many of the other places in town, but it is a very cool group of people. Very accepting. Just a cool vibe. As is the comedy club. Really awesome place. The first time I went, James McLeod, who I know you had briefly in your episode with Christopher. He randomly made a joke that was like clearly a reference to porn, but it wasn't. Like there wasn't technically anything about porn in it, but it was about like backing up into a dryer and getting stuck or something like that, and like he's like, who knows, or something like that. And I reacted. He could tell that I and he calls me out. He's like, you watch pornography, and that's really bad. And I was just like so embarrassed. I was like, what the hell? This is my first time here. Like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this to me? And so I came back the next week and I wrote this like 5-minute set about that, about, washing machines and whatnot. And, it wasn't bad. And so every week I came back and I was like, I'm going to do new stuff. And I've gotten a lot better. I was not great then. It was pretty rough. It was pretty rough, I got to say, but, I'm doing a show tonight. It's my first Saturday night show at Rose City. And I'm pretty excited.
Yeah.
Pretty excited. Yeah.
No, that sounds cool, man. So is that anything you consider doing as a career, or is this just for you?
I don't know. It's not really something that I could do as a career. Like, I'm not good enough yet, Maybe. I think it would also take the fun out of it. But I could also see, like, I enjoy it. It is a lot of fun getting up on stage. It is a confidence boost, absolutely. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. There's a community of people around it, and laughing is pleasant, right? It's a good time. It's inherently
depends what kind of laughing.
Well, yeah, being tickled to death is probably not ideal, but yeah, no.
Laughing at you.
Yeah, right?
Laughing about you.
Right. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, being laughed at is not great. But it's fun. I could, in theory, if I, am more successful at it and things continue getting better, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I've been paid a few times to do it, and that's
not bad.
reassuring. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, lastly, what I'd like to cover is we're currently in a school bus.
We are. I notice. Yeah.
Yeah. And I figured you were here first, and it seemed pretty normal to you.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I decided to accept it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the social norm.
Yes. Yeah. It's been normalized in this room. Yeah.
So, I guess what's the story behind the school bus?
So I had no intention of living in a school bus. I went camping one time with an ex, and a few spots over from where we were camping in our camping spot, there was a school bus. Spoiler alert, it is this bus. And she was talking about getting it as like a recreational vehicle. She didn't. A few months passed. My lease was coming up at my apartment, and I was jokingly like, oh, maybe I should get that bus. And then I thought about it for a second. I was like, I am such a weirdo. That would fit me very well, you know. And I bought it, you know. It was pretty cheap. I only paid $10,000 for this thing. And it was pretty much fully converted. I added all the tech stuff, like the computers, the monitors, there's a million wires down there. All these.
You saying all this didn't come with it?
No, it didn't. It did not. There was a bunk bed here. There was a bunk bed there. I had to get that removed. I installed a 100-gallon water tank. There was like a 16-gallon water tank at first. You know, a few other changes. I painted the whole thing. So it is all painted in dry erase paint. I don't think that green marker works, but yeah, I doodle. I take notes everywhere. You can see above you, there's notes. That's passwords, old passwords I don't use anymore. So
I was gonna say,
yeah.
I'm gonna need to blur out.
Yeah, no, that's fine, I guess. But yeah, no, I really enjoy it. The outside, the stripes on the side of the bus, it was supposed to be cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. The magenta came out unfortunately red, like raspberry colored. And then I was going to paint it all in dry erase, not just dry erase paint, but glow in the dark paint. Unfortunately, in Winona where I was, there was a big wasp problem. And so I got the yellow stripe done. And then I got like half of the red stripe done. And I was just like, screw this. I'm going inside. Like, I'm not painting this anymore. But I painted the whole inside in dry erase paint, like all of these walls. Even this, you know, in theory, I haven't finished this. I never finished that. But most of the walls in here are, like, the ceiling and everything is all dry erase. And, in fact, before you leave, I want you to sign the guest book up there.
Oh, okay.
That would be cool. I try to get everyone that's in here to sign it. And it's pretty full. I mean, you can see I've gotten a good few signatures on that panel there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And, yeah, so I painted it. I installed all this stuff in it. And it's been my home for over 3 years now. And it's, I don't know, it's funny. It's quirky. I'm quirky. It fits me.
Yeah.
It's, even though I haven't really used it to travel, which was the initial goal, one day. One day. Yeah. My brother-in-law has
one day
invited
I'll
me.
get it off of the cinder blocks.
Well, yeah, no, it's on wheels. It's on wheels, thankfully. But my brother-in-law has invited me to move to upstate New York with him and my sister and everyone to get it there. So I would just have to physically get it there, and then I don't know. That's something I might do. I'm not a Texan. I'm not even from here. You know, like I've lived in Texas for a number of years, a decade. But yeah, I'm from the East Coast. I'm from Baltimore, so maybe it's time to keep moving. I really like traveling and being in different places. So
yeah,
I've sort of just gotten stuck in East Texas. I don't know how it happened.
So what brought you down here? I guess
I followed a girl. I followed a girl out here, and then we broke up a while later. So like, you know. And then stayed in East Texas because of another girl. Then we broke up. And now I'm just still here. So yeah.
And there's no girls.
There's no girls. No. Yeah, terrible. Terrible the way the world
I hear
works.
there's some in upstate New York.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that would be cool.
No, thanks for letting me out here, man. Thanks
absolutely.
for sharing, your life story.
Yeah,
and thanks for, debating about AI.
Sure.
Or discussing
I love it.
AI.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was really a debate. But.
No, it was a pleasant conversation. I enjoyed this as well, and thanks for...
I try not to yell too much at people.
No, you're not a yeller. I will say, I may start streaming again, so to check me out on that, it would be at schoolbus soy. So that's just how it's spelled. If you don't know how to spell school bus, look it up. And then SOY. I didn't need to spell all that out. Yeah, I think that's it in terms of plugging myself. That's, yeah.
So what's that on?
Like everything.
Everything?
Yeah, all the platforms. Twitch, Instagram, Twitter.
Okay. I'll link
Twitter.
everything down below so people can find it.
Yeah. And I do comedy under the stage name Oliver Twist. Currently, I don't know. That may change, so we'll see. I may switch to Soy. Maybe it's time.
Yeah. No, thanks, man, for letting me in here. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming.
Oh, hi. You made it to the end. Congratulations, not many people do that. While you're here, as well, like and subscribe and check out our social media on Instagram and Facebook under the same name as down there. Thanks.